So is the barber entitled to moksha? If he cuts hair of people's hair, is he entitled to moksha or not? Is our cook in the kitchen entitled to moksha? The gatekeeper and the watchman and the people who are cleaning the toilets, are they entitled to moksha? Yes, very much they are entitled to moksha, provided they desire for it. If they only desire for a salary, for the haircut that is given, salary for the food that has been cooked, some appreciation for maintaining the premises clean, some kind of a reward or recognition for a good security service, if that is all they desire, then that is all they get. Though they are entitled for much more, but they have only asked for so much. Therefore, they are only going to get so much. Kadavantora, Nirantera, Kavalanna, Ekkuva Radura. Whatever is the size of your pot, the vessel, the cup, that much water only can you take from the well or the ocean. Chinnu Chelimilo Munchinaina, Sapta Sagarmulu Ninchilaina, whether you dip that cup into a small pond, or whether you take the cup to the great ocean, water will come not according to the size of the ocean or the lake. It will come according to the size of the cup. Is anybody entitled for moksha? Yes, everybody is entitled. Everybody is entitled to this divine bliss, to this freedom, to this state, exalted state of supreme peace, prashanti. Everybody is entitled to that. But only if they realize that they are entitled to this, and that is what they should come for. Go to a big great guru and go with a small cup. According to your size of the cup, you are going to receive the grace. Even if you are entitled for more, you cannot, because your cup is only so small. Your thinking is only so small. Your aspiration, your desire for the highest is so less. So according to that you get it. That is why Krishna said very well. Chaturvija bhajante mam. 4 kinds of people come to me. Ye jana, Sukritorjuna. They all have done some good deed. Otherwise they won't come to God at all. People say the biggest threat is religious conversions from one religion to the other. No, the biggest threat is conversion into an atheist. Use all the science and logic and say, this is the reason why God does not exist. What has happened to science and spirituality? The fight between the two, if you observe. I heard a term called God of gaps. God of gaps means whenever science cannot explain something, we put God in that gap and say that is why God is there, because science cannot explain. The moment science can explain, all right, we'll find another gap and put our God over there. That's how we keep shifting, and the gaps are becoming narrow and narrow because science is able to explain more and more and more. Therefore, this God of gaps thing is what is leading to atheism everywhere. I think people take great pride in saying, I'm spiritual but I'm not religious. What do they mean? They only know. It's a fashion statement. Most of these status updates are, I'm spiritual but not religious. Whatever they mean. But this problem of God of gaps is when people don't believe in God at all. So even if you believe in God and come begging for something as silly as a job and a salary or some relief from pain or suffering, even then some sukruta, you have done some good, otherwise you wouldn't have come this way. You would have found some other way. That is what is Bahunam Janmanamante. After many, many births of such wanderings, finally the boat comes to the shore and seeks God. For what sake? For many sakes. One, arti. I need a salary. I'm a poor man. I need some income. I need some financial security. I have loans to pay. I have debts. I have fees to pay for my children. I have rent to pay for my house. I have EMIs. List is long. They come for God for that. So even in this ashram or anywhere else, there might be people who are just artis. who's come for some problem in their life, they didn't get anything anywhere else. So they came and fell at God's feet. Please save me, help me. All right. God will say, all right, come. Your cup is how big? This much? All right, take as much your cup takes as much you can fill in your cup. Then Artharthis come. Their cups are also small. And they are also coming for some desire only. It could be not just financial or problem with finances. It could be recognition, it could be fame, it could be power, position, authority. It could be any of these things. They all come for that. And their God is the ocean unlimited He is. But your abilities are limited, so you only pick up so much from that ocean of compassion. You get your artharthi, those desires which are worldly and petty, fulfilled. At least you are better than those fast-growing species called atheists, an extinct species called devotees. So you are there, so I will save you any which ways. You begin there. So artharthi. Then comes those who are jignasu. They are done with their problems. Not that their problems are solved. Their problems are not done, but they are done with their problems. See, these problems will keep coming and going. There is no end to this. If I solve one, tomorrow another will appear. Therefore, how long will I go behind my problems and desires? They are unending. They are endless. They come continuously. So why should I bother God for these things? Let it be. That's a part of my karma. That is a part of this whole life's game. And it will keep happening. Sukha, dukkha, labha, alabha, jaya, ajaya. It will keep happening as day and night. So let me not bother about this. Understand the difference. Jignasu is not free from all the problems. He did not become Jignasu because all his financial, emotional, family, or professional, personal problems were solved by God. That is not the reason why he became Jignasu. He became because he realized these problems are a part of this life. Anityam, asukham, lokam. Therefore, it's a part of the life. How long will I go on begging God for solving my problem? Is that all God is meant to do? Yes, He did solve my problems. From 10 years, He's been solving my problems. He's been helping me in all possible ways. So how long should I go on? So he becomes a jignasu. Enough is enough. So it doesn't mean that he does not have a problem. It does not mean that he does not have another 2 daughters to get them married, or it does not have a son to get him educated or send him to US. Or it does not mean that he does not have a property dispute happening with his brothers or sisters. Or it's not that somebody has not cheated him or her for something in their lives. Yes, or somebody is not sick. Nothing like that. They have all these. But they have grown above these and said, enough is enough. Let me seek higher things. But then again, he's a jignasu. He's only asking questions. Does he mean to truly find the answers? May not. His joy is only in asking questions. Some children are there in the class. You must be knowing teachers. Their joy is in harassing the teacher by asking questions. They don't mean anything. They don't need to know the answer also. They already know the answer. They are most of the time testing the teacher. The teacher also knows the answer or not. There are some children. Why they ask questions? So that everybody should know how brilliant they are, how much they have done homework and come. So there will be people. Like that there are jignasu. But what happens? Again our Ashtavakra laments. Ajivapi jignasu parastatra vimuhyate. In the whole life you keep running behind questions of God. But you don't mean to practice anything. You just want to develop intellectual knowledge and give lectures or talk about it and show your pandityam in front of those poor artharthis. That's all is their joy. Parastatra vimuhyate, ajivamapi. All life also he does this jignasu, this business of asking, getting questions answered. Still the ultimate will elude him, evade him. He will never receive that. Because his cup again is there, but probably slightly bigger than, but still full of holes, and it won't stay. So there is no point. He cannot contain the entire ocean in that cup, however big it is. So jignasu also is kind of, though entitled for higher things, is only exercising limited rights over God or Godhood. Then there are jnanis. As I said, it's not that jnanis don't have financial problems, jnanis don't have family problems, or jnanis don't have political issues or professional issues. It's not that in Gyani's house everybody is married and settled well abroad in US, California. It's not that in Gyani's life there are no property disputes and fights with their neighbors and kith and kin. It's not that in Gyani's wife, the wife is the most faithful or the husband is the most faithful. It's not that in Gyani's life he's not going to get a leg pain, a backache, or a cancer for that matter. It's not even that Gyani does not get questions about the existence, about this, but he's not interested in any of these things. He says, yes, all these exist. Problems exist and they will exist. Even today, if I solve, tomorrow something will come. Name, recognition, fame, mind wants it, it exists. But I choose not to pay attention to it. And all kinds of questions also exist. The chicken and egg questions. Destiny came first, free will came first. Free will is more powerful, destiny is more powerful. Jignasu questions these are. Gyani is not bothered. When a snake is coming to bite you, are you going to sit and analyze, no, where did this snake is coming? Where is this coming from? How is it traveling? Oh, look at its motion. It's coming to bite you. But you are interested in which species is that, to which particular group it belongs. Are you going to sit and analyze all these snakes, or are you going to run from there? So this kind of jignasu stupidity is there. Karma is there. Where did this karma come? If all are born from God, why am I worse than the other person? Or why the other person is better than me? Why that fellow is close to Swami? Why I am far from Swami? Why did I not do good deeds? Why they did the good deeds to reach Swami? It's all like analyzing that snake which is approaching you fast. Which species? What is this name? Zoological name? The scientific name? Go on and on. It will come bite you and you are dead. So Jnani will not waste time in these stupid questions. He doesn't care. Which breed, which species, where is that coming from? He's only very worried in saving himself. Forget where it's coming from. First run. Because all I know is it's a snake. It will come and bite me. All these discussions can happen later. But first I have to save my soul. Isn't it? That is the Jnani's way. They will not engage themselves in too many wasteful questions. Why, Swami, my karmas are like that? Why I got a wife like this? Why I got a husband like this? I have got a husband and wife like this. That's how it is. Now what can I do? I will continue to lead my life in such a way that I rise above all these dualities and remain in a state of equanimity. That is what I need to do now. What is the point in going on discussing what happened in the past and blaming yourself or blaming everybody else? Or even asking questions of this nature. Who came first? Who came second? If free will is more powerful than divine destiny, then why I did not choose the right things at the right time? If destiny is what is more powerful, then what is the use of free will? If I am in charge of my own fate, then what is God's role? If God is only decided everything is a drama, I am only an actor, then how can you blame for the sins that I commit? These are all the ways of that jignasu. Ajivam api jignasu. But this kind of curiosity is unnecessary, it's a waste of time. Our culture was so clear about it. Somebody asked, Vedas were written, these are questions people have asked, so I am answering it during the discourse itself. So Vedas were written in which year? When was the first Rishi and who got the first message of Veda? So I said they were written, there are Paurushyas, there is no beginning and end to the Vedas. When did it come? It came with the advent of man, when the first man opened his eyes and looked around. So when was the first man who had opened his eyes? When was he born? I told, if you go by the yugas, they have been there for millions of years. Oh, so how long is each yuga? And if we are in this particular cycle, the Manavantara, when was the previous Manavantara? And who was the Brahma and the Manu for that? And why was he the Brahma and Manu? Why I was not? No end to this questioning. So please don't waste your time. You don't have to prove your pandityam to anybody. That somebody comes and says, most of these gurus are actually thriving on the jignasus, idle curiosity. They come and their only question is these kinds. And whatever the Guru answer, whatever they understand, they think now they are more spiritual because they got the knowledge of where the origin of universe was, who was the first avatar, and after that who came, and after that who didn't come, and what were the number of cycles. And they're so interested in all the periphery, so interested in beating around the bush. That is the value of the idle curiosity. That's of no use. If really only one curious question you should ask is, who am I? All the questions are waste. If you are a jignasu and you must ask a question, the question should be, who am I? All other questions should be discarded. Why this mind was created like this? Why God did not create it in a way that it is more controllable? Why God had to create it external going? Why it was not internal going? It is not going to solve any problem. It is not going to help our mind or ourselves at all on this path. So our scriptures did not sit and document which rishi came on which day and which time. Nobody cared. They were only interested in the knowledge. They were not interested in the facts and figures. Where the Western thinking is documenting, recording facts and figures. And they forget the knowledge. They don't think about that deeply. And because of that, what happens? Our culture looks inferior. Oh, these people don't even know when the origins of these things were. So probably they don't know anything, they're simply blabbering. What is the proof? Till 25, 30 years back, they said our culture is only 2500, 3000 BC? This Harappa. Now they're saying, no, there are some things which are 7,000, 8,000 years old also. Then after some time they'll come, I think there is something more than that which we don't know. It will go on like that. This is idle curiosity. Idle curiosity. When did the Upanishads get written? When which sage appeared first? Who got which message? Unnecessary. In Kabir Das, one beautiful doha is this. He says, Jati na pucho sadhu ki, pucha lijiye gyan. Don't sit and ask the sadhu, what is your origin, which language, which place are you coming from, which caste you belong to, which ashrama you are associated with. Jati na pucho. Don't waste your time asking these questions to the sadhu. Puch lijiye gyan. Ask the knowledge. I don't care which of these ashramas you are from and which caste you belong to. You come from north, east, west, south. I don't care. I'm interested in my emancipation and I know you can help me. So I'll not waste my time asking curious questions. Tell me, give me wisdom, give me jnana. That is the nature of the true sadhaka. Not interested in this periphery and this idle curiosity. They're only interested straight into the wisdom, the core of it. So that is jnani. So we must strive to be like that. Don't ask idle questions. Especially this origin of the universe, karma, free will, destiny. You know there is karma, you're experiencing it, that's all is the truth for now. You deal with that truth. The snake is approaching you fast. So sitting and analyzing its species, its generic name, its scientific name, you run from there. Are you going to, who's going to, after you are dead, you will report, I was bitten by certain species of the certain snake whose generic name is this, scientific name is this, that's how I died. Is that what is important at the end? Rather, you ran from there and somebody asked, which snake was chasing you? I don't know, it was a dangerous snake, I ran. Are you going to feel guilty? Oh, I did not check which snake was that. How do I report it to the newspaper tomorrow? Is that going to be your concern? No. You saved yourself, you are relieved. That should be the focus of a sadhaka. Instead of going in lanes and by-lanes of Tarka, Vada, Shastra, Upashastras, waste of time. You straight focus on where you need to go. And that is to know who you are. That is all that matters at the end. Why I am saying is that when many questions arise in your mind, if these questions are simple, differentiate, idle curiosity. If I don't know, is it going to stop my spiritual sadhana? Is it going to be any way significant for my further growth? No. I don't need to waste my time knowing all that. Yeah, I may not be able to impress a friend of mine or two who wants to argue with me about the greatness of some other culture or historic importance of some other culture over mine, Doesn't matter. His idle curiosity is simply wasting his time. I will rather run away from the snake. So that should be the focus of the sadhaka. So jignasu, jnani, all four kinds of people come to God. And poor God has no choice. If he does not entertain them, then all of them will become the new breed, atheists. They will not believe. Science will explain to them some kachapaka, some theorem they will explain, and they will believe that yes, science has explained this so far. And if you ask the question, what about that which science has not explained? They'll say science will explain some point in time. Science is exploring. Where they said universe was small, now they say universe is infinitely expanding. Like a balloon is expanding and every day it's moving up farther and farther. And there are billions of universes. We are in a universe, in that we are in particular galaxy, in that we are in particular solar system. And then we are saying now there are billions of universes, billions. And the size of the universe nobody knows. Millions and millions of light years. What is the point in all this? Does this support you? Does this help you become more peaceful, joyful, contented? Nothing. At the end you have to deal with your day-to-day issues. So forget about this wasteful curiosity. When this Rama come, which date, which year, which what? All right, he came, he taught something. Catch that. Don't go for these details. Go for the core. Because it is said, when Shaunaka went and approached Angirasa and asked, Kasminnu bhagavo vijñātum, sarvamidam vijñātam bhavati. But what should I know? Kasmin vijñāte. What should I know by which everything will be known to me? He was not interested in other things because he had spent enough time dealing with aparavidya. He spent enough time dealing with scriptures and shastras and agamas and rituals and karmakandas. He had done enough of this. At the end he realized he has not found the peace. He has not understood anything. He has only stuffed his head with just too much of logic and details and facts and figures. But at the end he is not having any peace. Therefore he ran to Angirasa to ask him, tell me how do I know the truth? What should I know that I know everything? And then he told him there are two kinds of education. Dve vidya. Two kind. Paracha, aparacha. There is one which is of this world. There is a vidya, what we are all this Vishaya Jnana. And there is the vidya which is spiritual. And all these, even he said Ruga, Yajur, Sama, all these Vedas are lower education only. One may think I know whole of Rigveda and all the Upanishads contest, I know by rote. Still our Angirasa will say, well, good, but at the end of it, you have not known anything. Because all this is your aparavidya, avidya only. The paravidya, the real vidya is about your own self, knowing which everything is known. Knowing the wood, all articles made of wood are known. Knowing the clay, all articles made of clay are known. Knowing the electricity, all the functioning of all the electrical equipments are known. That which is the source, which is the one which has made all these things. And therefore it is important. So keep your curiosity limited only to that which is helping you in your further spiritual growth. If it's only an exercise of the mind and collection of facts and collection of information and material, you're wasting your time. As such, you practice very little spirituality, those 15-20 minutes a day. In that also, if you spend most of the time thinking of these things, what a waste. Truth is that we were all born to practice spirituality and all else should have been adjusted according to that. I must do my sadhana. Therefore, I must eat light breakfast because I'll feel sleepy. I must keep my body healthy, so I should do some exercise so that I'm healthy. I can sit longer for sadhana. I must not talk to too many people because those thoughts will come into my head and it will trouble me. Therefore, it will affect my sadhana. Or I must not go into certain places because going there is bad vibrations. When I come back, it will all be lodged somewhere in my being and that will all come out during my sadhana. So everything was focused on the sadhana alone for the sadhaka. For him, everything was supposed to be realization. And all else should have been fitting into this plan. If it is not fitting, give it up. But today what has happened? Earlier I said, dhano moolam idam jagat has become today. Dharma moolam idam jagat was earlier. What dharma? Atma dharma, swadharma. Today dhano moolam. Everybody wants to adjust everything according to how much money they can make. Isn't it? No breakfast, run to the office. Why? Because I must reach early, get a client call and make some deal. So breakfast is thrown, skipped. People don't sleep in the night. Because they are working and working and working. Why? Because they need to make more money, get a promotion and get progress and become richer or whatever. Everything around them is revolving around money now. Whereas our ancient culture said everything should revolve around jnana. To attain that jnana, you must put all your efforts. Yatata, put your efforts. Yatatam, yatatmavan. You must put all your efforts to attain that jnana. It means if you're eating too much of breakfast is coming in your way of your sadhana, don't eat breakfast then, however tasty it might be. If today's breakfast is masala dosa and I have the privilege of eating 3 of them, but I know after eating 3 dosa, Om is not going to come out of me. What's going to come out? You know what is going to come out. Therefore, I will not eat too much masala dosa. Yukta ahara viharasya. I will contain my habits of eating, visiting, karmasu, cheshta, everything. I will control all my desires, all my actions. I will limit them to the bare basic minimum. So that my sadhana, my abhyasa does not get affected by it. Have you seen a mother? There are some mothers, they have a small baby. Their whole life revolves around the baby. She wakes up, before the baby wakes up, she must cook the baby's food, keep it ready. Before the baby wakes up, she should be ready to feed. When the baby is going to school, after that only she will do all her other work. And before the baby comes back from the school, she's finished all her work to be ready to receive the baby again. Everything of that lady, that mother, revolves around the child. Husband also will not get his cup of tea if the child is there. She will say, you make your own tea because I am attending to the child. Is it or not? That is the kind of dedication one should have for one's own sadhana and abhyasa. That everything else can wait. This cannot. This is my decision and doing my sadhana, spend that much time. To me, you should have spent all your time on sadhana. But because it is not possible, we also have some other activities. Do that. But every time you find 2 minutes also, you should get back to sadhana. That's how one should prepare one's mind for sadhana. Not spend time thinking of unnecessary, unwanted things. Idle curiosity is not good. It's wasting your time and energy. It may leave you again intellectually on a high. I know more than others. But spiritually you are a low. You didn't learn anything. So don't waste your time analyzing the snake. Just run. That should be the attitude of a true spiritual sadhaka. We were all discussing something on Vairagya. Shankaracharya says so beautifully, Bhaja Govindam. Suramandir taru mula nivasaha. Whether he sleeps in a temple, Suramandira, God's temple, or taru mula nivasa, or under a tree, Chaya bhutala, his bed is the earth. Ajinam vasa, his clothes are the bark of the trees. Means he has nothing basically bare. What happens to such a person who is so indifferent to all these things? Whether I sleep in a temple or I sleep under a tree, I sleep on the floor, I wear silk or I wear a tree's bark or the animal skin or whatever. What happens to that? Sarva parigraha bhoga tyagaha. The one who has given up all accumulation, amassment, parigraha. Yama says aparigraha. Don't amass, don't accumulate things which are not necessary. Whether it's physical, material, financial, emotional, mental, intellectual, of any nature, don't accumulate and crowd your life unnecessary. Friendships, social media contacts. We don't need them. You are confusing and crowding your head. So aparigraha, Yama says, aparigraha, get rid of those. Don't accumulate more than what you require. That's why I told even ladies, 6 months you have not used the saris, you don't need the sari. No, the sari I got during my marriage. So what? No, if I go for any other person's marriage, in 6 months you have gone to anybody's marriage, no, discard it. You don't need it. You need for darshan, need for your work, that is fine. Like men, they keep accumulating gadgets. You don't need it, don't accumulate it. Don't simply crowd it. Like that friendships, like that unwanted money, like that unwanted relationships, thoughts, even these intellectual facts and collection of information. Nothing is necessary. You use what you have, what you need to use. Everything else is lying around. So, sarva parigraha bhoga tyagaha. We are talking about vairagya, so I am coming to that. The one who learns to give up sarva parigraha, bhoga, all kinds of enjoyments which are unnecessary. It means if you did not eat that another dosa, it was not going to make you die. You did it because you became a slave to that tongue. You see? And that is why you ate it. Your stomach kept on saying, please, please don't send another dosa. I am overloaded. It's impossible for me to digest this. But tongue says, take it, take it, take it. A hot one has come now. So eat it. Tongue said you ate it. Stomach is under trouble now. And with that stomach which is swollen, how are you going to chant God's name? How are you going to sit in one position for 2 minutes straight, you tell me? Not possible. Bhoga tyagaha. Because it will come in the way of my spiritual growth, so I must do tyaga of it. Kasya sukham na karoti viragaha. How can such a viragi, the person of such detachment and dispassion, not be happy, he says. Kasya sukham na karoti viraga. For that person of detachment and dispassion, how can there not be happiness? Such a person has to be happy. This is the conclusion. So when you struggle to now practice vairagya, and you are finding possible, you made a list, merits, demerits of all your thoughts, words, actions, objects, accumulations. Why should I keep it or why should I throw it? Why should I keep it? So you have 10 points in why should you keep it. You have 2 points in why should you throw it. Most of them. Because you are attached. Find a reason why it will be useful, why I need this, why I have to have this. It's important for me. You will keep writing. Isn't it? Then what you realize at the end, your mind is playing, it's filling up why you should have it. And heart just says one thing, should not have it because it's going to come in the way of your spiritual growth. That's one argument heart has. And rest all of the arguments are by the mind. So list out a long list of why you should not give up, why you should not throw it away, why you should not detach from some thought, word or action or people or place or objects or idea, information, emotions. Why should you not? It will give a long list. Like I asked some people, if somebody is making a mistake, you should have pointed out, no? You should have pointed out. You will save the entire system if you are able to find somebody who is making a mistake. You would have helped everybody. What is the answer, I would have heard that person. Because God is in that person also. So I would have told something and that person would have been hurt. Therefore I will not tell. I didn't tell. I'm sorry. My question is that if God was really in that person, would he be making that mistake in the first place? If God was only operating to that person, as you supposed to believe, you seem to believe, can that person behave in that particular way? It means at that point God was not operating, his mind was operating. And therefore you should have pointed the mistake. And who would be hurt? God is not hurt. God never can be hurt. It is the mind which will get hurt, ego which will get hurt. That's fine. That's fine. You shouldn't have kept quiet. See, this is what I'm saying. Mind's logic. He'll give a wasteful logic. All logic is a waste. Even if it gives 100 reasons why I should have it and my heart says one and the only thing that you should not have it because this is not spiritual, this is not going to help you attain your goal. Enough. That one argument is enough. One argument is enough to throw everything away. Of course, you may have 2-3 more arguments. No, you may need it after a week or after 10 days. You have promised somebody, so you need to give this to that person. Whatever be the reason. There might be 2-3 more meritorious reasons. But one reason that this is not spiritual and it's not going to help me grow spiritually, more than enough to discard all the reasons the mind gives why you should have it. Why you should have wealth, why you should have big family or money or more properties or so much more intelligence, knowledge, skills, talents. If it's all not helping you in the spiritual path, just mercilessly, ruthlessly, I said heartlessly, dump it. Whoever it might be the dearest of your friend, but is not spiritual. Then you don't give me the logic. No, if I have the responsibility of helping my friend come up, isn't it? The people are saying, when Karna went and joined Duryodhana, did it help Karna or destroy him? He couldn't change Duryodhana, nor he could make peace with his own inner conscience. In a state of confusion, utter confusion, he died. Whereas Vibhishana said, my own brother is wrong. And all other brothers, cousins, nephews, everybody is supporting my evil brother. And I know if I talk against him, he may just finish me off. Or may throw me out of the kingdom. And then whatever little comfort and, these things I have, the palace and the privileges will go away and I will be on the road. So what should I do? He didn't think once also. My brother is not on the side of Dharma, is not for Rama, I am not for him. Walked away. See the dispassion. You are asking how to practice Vairagya. This is how you should practice Vairagya. First and foremost question, is it going to help me attain the spiritual goal? If not, dump. No arguments. Don't even give time for mind to, it's not a court of law where you give chance to both of them to argue out their points and whoever weighs more wins the argument and wins the case. No. If one argument heart comes up with, this is not spiritual, it's not going to help you in your spiritual growth, that is worth hundreds of arguments of mind why it is worth it. Just dump it. That's enough. That itself is, this one thought is enough to develop Vairagya and come to this detachment which I am talking about, getting rid of your unwanted things. It will just help you. This one thought should help you. Like Vibhishana who decided, is it dharma? Is it according to Rama? No. Whatever it is, there might be plenty of wealth on this side. There might be all the comforts and all the privileges that I am going to have or going to lose now. I may be separated from my own wife and family. I may be killed. Anything is okay because this is not spiritual. When Vibhishana like Rakshasa could think so straight, imagine he was going to lose everything what he ever could have. His wealth, his inheritance, his privileges, his powers, his family, even his life. But he just decided, I must go to Rama because that is right. Karna, what did he do the other side? When he was not allowed to participate because he was not a Kshatriya or what a king, he was only a son of a, so to say, a charioteer. Duryodhana got up and said, no, I'll give you one kingdom. You are the king of... So you can also participate. Now let's have a war. Let's have the competition, he says. And what should Karna should have told? Duryodhana, this is not right. But Karna also to prove himself. His mind was there. It wanted to, do what it wanted to do. So he accepted the offer, went ahead to prove his supremacy. And then what happened? He became indebted to Duryodhana. Never could come out of that debt. All life even if he knew Duryodhana was wrong, all life he suffered under him. Bhishma Pitamaha, he suffered all his life because he listened to his mind and not to the heart. He didn't think that this is right or this dharma or not. He didn't think. He just kept on arguing. I have given promise to Satyavati, my mother. I have taken a Bhishma vow, pratignya, that I will protect this seat of Hastinapura. I have taken a vow that I will not marry and continuously serve whoever be the king who sits on this throne, whether he is evil or good, he didn't bother about it. All my life, because I can live forever, I will fight for the Hastinavati and the king of Hastinavati. Mind's arguments. All seems right? And on one side, heart says, what you're saying is wrong. Just leave this. I know you made a promise, but it is evil, it is adharma. So this promise can be broken. You will gain less sins by breaking the promise than by continuing with the promise. So you leave that but he didn't do. He knew Krishna is God. He knew Pandavas were right. He also raised the Pandavas, right? He knew everything that Dhritarashtra is, usurped the throne in the absence of Pandu. And he doesn't deserve it, nor his son Duryodhana deserves it. He knew everything. But what is the use? At the end, he decided in the favor of his mind and gave up the voice of his heart. Sattva Buddhi was not there. So Sattva Buddhi alone can help us in these situations. Our Sattva Buddhi should tell us, if this is not going to help us in our spiritual path, it could be simple as the dress that I wear, the food or the quantity of food that I eat, the number of hours I sleep, the places I go, the things I see, the kind of stuff I read, the kind of videos or kind of movies or kind of external things that I watch. For everything you should develop this interest. Because unless you develop that, and because you have only one interest, which is to realize and become happy, crossover. I was telling these boys, we make efforts, but they're flimsy efforts. Like throwing a ball up and it comes down right back. So for a moment or two, we stay in that exalted state of supreme divine bliss, declare ourselves Jivan Mukta, but the next moment, Jivan Bhukta. For once, push yourself so strongly that you cross over this gravitation force. You escape the earth's gravity. Escape velocity, they call it. Escape for once, so that you don't have to again be in the control of this gravity. You have gone up and never you are going to return to this earth. Earth means this is symbolic. You are free. Nobody can control you now. So try that, is what I was telling these interns. That you have pushed yourself many times. Bahunam janmanam. Many births you have tried escaping. But your efforts were very limited. And you just went up for some time and fell right back. From the mother's lap into the mother's womb. That's all happened all this time. For once you put enough effort. Gain that momentum, get that escape velocity and escape this Janma Mrityu. And no one returning, you can free Swachhanda Charina. You can roam as you please. Nobody can tell you what to do, what not to do, because you are always doing the right thing. You are dictated, you are guided by your dharma, inner conscience. You are not going to go wrong anytime. Machitta you will become. All your mind will be continuously engaged in me. There is no other thought in your mind other than me. But how it will come? It will not come easy. Patanjali says, Abhyasa Vairagyena Vritti Nirodha. All your mind's vagaries should be stopped by Vairagya, but Abhyasa of Vairagya. The practice of detachment will help you control your mind at some point in time. So how do you practice detachment? This is how. Sit down. If something says that not going, it could be anything. It could be a question of your very survival the next day. It does not matter. Have that much of courage as Vibhishana had. What will I eat tomorrow? Does not matter. If I am on the right path, food will come to me. If I am on the right path, what I need, it will be given to me. Like Vivekananda once was traveling. See, he was so intelligent, he could become a lawyer and join this British courts. And done what? Fought against Indians and punished Indians. On behalf of it, British courts were all fake. Everybody knew what's the final judgment going to be. Whoever you are. And if the judgment is not going to be that because of some clause, they will change the clause, they will change the penal codes and make sure that the British government wins. Whatever happens. So what's the point? But many people became barristers. He also could have become one. And he was so intelligent, he could have been a great lawyer. But he chose to argue for India, argue for Sanatana Dharma, argue for Hinduism. And he advocated it quite well around the world. But he could have been a small, petty, puny lawyer in some Calcutta court also. But he chose the other way around. So when he was a Parivrajaka, first 2 years he was roaming around the whole of country. He also followed Shankaracharya's method, walked up and down, north and south of the country. All by himself. Not a pocket money, no bank accounts, no ATM cards, no internet banking, mobile banking, not even money to bank. Just walked out of his house. And roamed around seeking God, seeking knowledge, seeking the understanding of country, which needs emancipation. So once he was traveling and he was going in a train, it seems, and he was very hungry. He had not eaten anything for maybe 2 days, 3 days, whatever it was. And there was this rich man who was sitting in the same compartment opposite to him. And that man said that you people, are young people, you should be working hard, and you people have taken to this lazy method of living, begging in the name of being monks. What a shame. And he was going on, how they are. So they was going on scolding. At that point in time, Vivekananda kept quiet. He was so strong to go and give a tight slap to that man. But he had learned his way. Earlier he would fight with anybody, but he would not now. He learned that is not the way. They are blabbering, let him blabber. A station came, he was so thirsty for water. Somebody gave water, he just drank and sat with that. And the other man bought a lot of food for himself. And he asked, he didn't ask him for food, he was arguing and shouting at Vivekananda. He said, God is there for me. He will provide for me. I don't need anybody else's help. He was very clear. And this man said, let us see. So the next station arrived. It is some station, you don't even know where you are right now. No Google Maps. He just gave that. He got down at the station just casually. And this man also, the rich man also got down in the same station. And then what happened? He saw one man with a mat tugged in his arms and a basket of food. He's searching somebody. The moment he sees Vivekananda, he comes running straight. Because Vivekananda is sitting under a tree, closing his eyes, hungry but cannot help. And this man comes and says, are you Swamiji, I am so and so, I run a sweetmeat shop, and afternoon I went to take a nap. And that time Balaji, my God, appeared in my dream and told, go to the railway station, there is one sannyasi who is hungry, feed him well. And so he came running, searching for the sannyasi in the station. He found Vivekananda, spread the mat on the floor, made him sit, washed his hands, feet, and opened a whole lot of food. You can imagine it's from a sweet shop fellow. All the favorite things, he came and spread in front of him. And this rich man, the merchant who was traveling, got a shock. So clear. Vivekananda is so clear. And therefore he deserves all the adoration. That's why he deserves God. Because he didn't come with a small cup, salary, wife, money, children, car, flat, bank account, stocks, bonds, FDs, pensions, insurances. He didn't come with these cups. He came to drink the whole ocean. He came to become the ocean. And he became, because God took care of that. So that is Vairagya. When you know that it's not going to help you in your spiritual path, just throw it. And I'm so boldly declaring, Krishna declares, Sarva dharman parityajya, mam ekam sharanam vraja. Leave everything to all dharma that you think. Somebody wrote to me, Swami, look at intelligent question. Yama appears in front of me, says, I give you a boon, but there are 3 choices I have. 1, I can do something, I can become Chiranjeevi or something. 2, it's like all those temptations of Nachiketa he offers me. First boon is that. Second boon is that my mother is on deathbed, he can give life to my mother. Third boon is he will tell me the Brahman so that I can be liberated. Now which one should I choose, Swami, he asked. The Mother's Day influence. 1, all wealth I'll give you, which is for himself. Which this boy said, I will not accept because I have a bigger problem at hand. That is, my mother is on her deathbed. And the next thing I have is Brahman. To know Brahman and be liberated. Now, which one should I take, he asked. And then he himself said, if I was there, Swami, I would have chosen my mother should live because that is my dharma. Am I right? It's a sincere question, honest question, I appreciate it. But then yesterday I told you the hierarchy of mothers. Did I or not? Tyajet purusham kulusyartham gramasyartham kulam tyajet gramam janapadasyarte atmatya prithivim tyajet. For the sake of family, give up yourself, individual. For the sake of village, give up the family. For the sake of nation or world, give up your village or whatever community you belong to. And for the sake of God, you can give up everything. So while at the face of it, for the jignasus and the intellectuals and all the feminists and advocates of motherhood will think how bad this boy is. But to God, Because to ultimate whom he is loyal to, he'll tell, yes, you give me Brahman. Because that is the reason why my mother even gave birth to me, that I should realize myself. She didn't give birth to me that she can live forever. She gave birth to me because I should be able to grow and realize Brahman. It's a different story that his or her mother might not have thought that way. But that is the ultimate goal. And jatasya hi dhruvo mrityu, dhruvam janma mritasya cha. Tasmad apariharyarthe natum shochitum arhasi. Those who are born, they are going to die. If the death has come, nobody can stop it. And those who are dead, they will be born again if they have not redeemed themselves. So why you unnecessarily cry, O Arjuna, over something which cannot be resolved? Why do you cry? It may sound like horrible. All the mothers will think this is what Swami is teaching all the students. But then he said, Kulam pavitram janani krutartham. A person who attains Brahmagyana, becomes a Brahman, one with Brahman, his mother is redeemed. If he becomes a Brahmagyani, his mother has already been given pavitram, kulam only pavitram. Forget mother, father, uncle, aunt, cousin, neighbors. Everybody has become pavitra for him. He has redeemed all of them in the process of redeeming himself. In the process of Atmanamokshatam, he has done the Jagadhitaya. And his mother also will be redeemed. Death is only temporary, isn't it? This birth, she was your mother. Next birth, or the previous birth. So as a son, what is your highest dharma? To redeem your mother of deaths and births. Is that not the highest dharma of a child? And when yesterday only told, Kulam pavitram janani kritata, mother will be redeemed. She'll be remembered forever for being the mother of a Brahmagyani. So this death is temporary. Anyway, if not 10 years later, it will anyway come. She's not going to live forever. It will anyway come. So the son should be discriminating. This is Vairagya. Now mind will give you 110 arguments. She bore you for 9 months. She struggled to feed you, clean you, take care of you, looked after so much. All life she has done. Now she is on the deathbed. As a son, is this what you should be doing? What kind of son are you? What kind of dharma is this? Where is your putra dharma, matru, whatever. He'll give a long list. But heart will tell one thing. Ultimate purpose of all life is to realize the self. And if I do that, my mother also will be redeemed. That I was born from her womb and I attained the highest, which is what she should have desired for me in the first place. And the moment you redeem, you can redeem everybody around you. Your mother will be naturally redeemed. Your whole kulam will be redeemed. When Hemleka landed up in that kingdom, what happened? She redeemed everybody in the process. So, this is Vairagya. This, even a very touchy and very tricky question like this should be again weighed in the light of Adhyatma's highest good and decided. So you will think, this boy is so selfish, he is only looking for his Brahmagyana. Many people give this argument at home. How can you be so selfish? You are leaving your mother, father struggling in their village and you want to go and serve society, you want to realize God. How horrible, how ugly, how selfish, what kind of spirituality is, they will say all these things. Vivekananda's mother also was like that. He had 2 sisters, both were in trouble. His younger brother did not have money to pay fees for his college education. Their house was taken over because of the debts that they had. And he recollects that in one of these places, he would cover himself with a blanket, but there were so many holes that his feet will keep coming out of one hole or the other whole night. That poverty, Vivekananda. Yet he decided to take to the spiritual path. The other option was, he's an intelligent fellow, can be a great barrister, advocate. British will take him in no time. And he can make a good earning, bed back the bungalow, put mother back into the palace, take care of everything at his home, and let the world go to hell. Let spirituality go to hell. Why should I bother? Neither he will redeem himself nor redeem anybody else. He could have also settled down with 4-member, 5-member family, in the course of time married and had 4 more children. He could have done that, right? So what did he choose? Is he wrong in choosing that? If he is not wrong in choosing that, how can this boy be wrong in choosing Atman over Deha Mata? How can this? So don't give in to such emotional. As somebody said, I read in Narsimurti's book, Tao philosophy, love is not an emotion, it is a decision, he said. Love is not an emotion, it's a decision. Love must know how to make a decision and not get drawn or carried away by emotions. I love that boy, so I spoil them. I love my child, so I give everything and spoil them. Is that truly love? It's not love. It's attachment, some raga. But if I truly love, then I should be able to decide correctly. That love will give me the strength to take the right decision. That is Tao philosophy, whatever. So Vairagya will come if you have that clarity in your head, accompanied by tremendous determination. This and nothing else, like Nachiketa. This and nothing else. I will ask you a question. Suppose Yama had given only one boon to Nachiketa. What would have been that boon? First boon of Nachiketa was, please make my father happy. When I go back, he should accept me. I should be happy and live long. All right. Second boon, he said, please teach me the way we can go to heaven, because my father desperately wants to go to heaven, but he's not knowing how to go. If you teach me, I'll teach him. Done. Third boon, teach me about Brahman. If Yama had given Nachiketa only one boon, Brahman, one boon that ask one anything, our Nachiketas would have asked, after learning about Brahman from you and the Nachiketa Yajna, I should go back to my father who should accept me with peace. Could have been, right? Somebody, when God told, ask a boon, and he said, may I eat with my great-grandchildren in gold plates. Would Nachiketa have done that? My question is, may after I attain Brahman and the way to heaven, go back to my father and live happily with him. That vara won't work. So if he had asked, I am sure Nachiketa would ask, okay, teach me Brahman. That's all he would have asked. He wouldn't have asked, I would go back to my father should get redeemed out of this Maya. He would have told, teach me Brahman even then, because I have found a perfect teacher in you. And I cannot miss this opportunity. Only you can teach me. You alone can teach me. Therefore, you teach me, I don't care about other things. Because all this, I've had hundreds of fathers, hundreds of mothers, as Gopikas told Krishna. And Krishna pretended to be angry with the Gopika who came late. Sometimes children come late and I pretend to be angry. Why are you late? What are you doing? Like that, Krishna. So Krishna went overboard and said, go back to your own husband. Why have you come to me now? So late. I've been waiting for you. Go back to your husband. She said, which husband should I go back to? In every birth I have had a new husband. Every birth I had a new father or a mother. In every birth, everybody was different for me. The only person who was the same in every birth of mine is you. So which husband, which father, which wife, which brother, which sister? Whom are you asking me to go back to? I only know you. You are the one who were there with me birth after birth after birth. That Daiva Mata was alone looking after us birth after birth after birth. All Matas did not help us. So whose lap should I go back to? This is what the Gopika asked Krishna. Which husband should I go back to? That clarity, that absolute precision is demanded of a sadhaka. And if you do that, what will happen to your actual wife of this birth, actual children of this birth, and the father of this birth, and the mother of, what will happen to them? They all will be taken care of. Why? Sarvadharvan parityajya mamekam sharanam raja. Aham tvam sarva papebhyo mokshayishyami mashucha. I will take care of everything. Ananyas chintayanto ma yejana paripasute tesham nityabhi yuktanam yogakshemam vahamyam. You worry about me, think about me, and I will worry about you. And everything that you need to worry about, I will worry about it. Simple one sentence. Somebody wrote, Swami, I have realized your small Telugu poems contain the essence of all the Vedantas. After reading Vedantas, he is realizing this. Till now nobody realized that in Swami's simple little sentences, Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta was there. Nobody realized that. Now they're realizing because I'm talking Vedanta, quoting from scriptures. Now they're feeling, Swami knows a lot. Till I was not telling these things, small Telugu poems, these are all his personal creations. Now everybody knows. One word, you do my work, I will do your work. It's equivalent to Ananyas Chintayantu Ma. Sarvadharman Parityajya. Is it or not? Is it not Abhayam Sarva Bhutebhyo? Is it not essence of all this which Krishna Rama have told in one simple English sentence? You do my work, I will do your work. Is it not the essence of... Do you have faith in this sentence is my question. Do you really have faith in this sentence? We quote it, misquote it. Do we really have faith in this sentence that yes, of course, even if I have to give up everything and have to follow Swami, I know Swami will look after everybody. And why I will tell you that. See, this body is mother, father, brother, sister, whatever needs to be there as a part of the Purva Prarabdha karmas are there. So this body and all the people associated with this body, they will travel to Kanyakumari. And there was a beautiful temple of Vivekananda Memorial Rock, where he meditated for 3 days, I believe, before going to or after coming back from America or something. As I said, I'm never interested in details, I'm interested in the core. So we went there, the group, and as everybody entered the Vivekananda Memorial Rock, and Swami Vivekananda, huge statue, is standing over there, dark color. And he's in the center, and the Guru Ramakrishna and Mother Saradama are on the either sides. So as this whole group went inside, so this body stood in front of the statue and prayed mentally that you are such a great disciple of your master. You, in those days, under such difficult circumstances, you followed your master and went to the almost the ends of the earth, all the other side of the earth at least, and spread his message of Vedanta and all this. What a great, noble, blessed soul are you. That is what this one told that one. And what did that reply? That Vivekananda came alive in the statue. Because they're all there in Sukshma, you see. They came alive, the statue. And the moment he came alive, he said, he ignored this comment. He ignored this comment as if he didn't hear at all. He was not. He looked and said, are these family members? He asked. So obviously the reply has to be there. Yes, Swamiji. These are all the family members of this body. This is the mother of the brother, sister, whatever. You know what Swami Vivekananda said? He said, your Guru has taken care of the family much better than my Guru. No comparisons. Your Guru has taken care of the family better than my Guru, he said. God has taken care of your family better than my family. Should we not have that faith in one sentence? You do my work, I'll do your work. That is the essence of Vairagya. I must do just what Swami wants me to do. Everything else can be thrown out of the window. It may sound hard and ruthless to your own personal relationships, mother, father, brother, sister. But who is this mother, father, brother, sister? And where were they at birth before? And where will they be after a birth more from now? So they are there. Respect them. Do what is required to be done. But when it comes to choosing between the great spiritual path and the others, it's always the spiritual path. And you can be rest assured. You don't even have to fear like the sannyasis of the past, whose family members are left to themselves and we don't know what become of them. Here is a Swami who says, you do what I am saying, you realize yourself, all your responsibilities are ma'am. Yoga kshemam vahamyaham. I will look after. You just do what I am trying to tell you. That's all. Yesterday I was telling, because the mind is so petty, it understands only money and finances. If I tell you anything, so everybody, how much work we have done? We have fed 25,000 families, let us say. Oh, 25,000. We have spent 25 lakh rupees feeding. 25 lakh rupees. Which attracts more? We spend crores running the institutions. 5,000 students are studying versus I spend 2 crores a month running the institution. Which sounds attractive to the media, to the general public. They'll only catch hold of the money part of it. They'll not see the seva part of things. That's the nature of it. That's why I was telling. If I can take care of thousands, 1 lakh children have been treated in our hospitals, 10,000, almost 12,000 have been operated for free, thousands have studied, lakhs have been fed. If I can look after all of them whom I don't even know, so to say, they don't know me, so to say, will I not look after you and your near and dear ones? Don't you have that much trust in me and in my word? Forget everything. Even economically, financially, will I not be capable of looking after you and your family? Tell me once. If I can look after 10,000 children's operation and thousands to study and lakhs to be fed, and any other disaster anywhere comes up, look after. Will I not look after you and your 4-member family? If you have faith and trust in me, will I not do that? Then why do you worry so much? Why are you not taking to this path, spiritual path? Why do you have to take the responsibility and burden of feeding your own husband, wife, children, mother, father? Why? Why you are sitting in a train putting that luggage on your head and suffering? Why? This is what makes me feel bad for all of you. Why? Why are you a beggar with a treasure buried in your backyard? Why? Why is all I'm asking. And I'm telling, dig it up, wealth is there. You're like, oh, it's too much of work to dig. I'll beg rather. This is what you're telling, isn't it? Dig 10 feet, you'll find a treasure pot full of gold. 10 feet, who will dig? I have to sleep, I have to eat, I have to entertain myself, I have to watch a movie, I have to read this book, I have to go and meet my friends, I have to go look after this, look after that. I have also office works, trust works. Where is the time to dig that 10 feet and pull the pot out? It's okay, I'll beg every day for the next 100 years and lifetimes to come. That is, I'm okay with that. Because I have all the other things to do other than time to dig the treasure out. That's all you are saying to me. And what am I saying in return? Forget all this. Ananyas chintayanto ma. Think of me alone. Forget all these things. Think of me alone. I will look after. Just do what I'm saying. You do my work, I'll do your work. What is my work? You become Jnani. That is what I'm saying. Now I'm so much more vocal about it. Nothing other than Jnanis will work for me. How can I help you? Become me, you help me. If you can't become me, you don't help me. Now I'm all the more vocal. I'm continuously telling. Till yesterday I told, no, join the institution, become a doctor, become a teacher, become an engineer, become an accountant. All that was there. There were ways, methods. The goal was to help me. Today I'm telling, the only way you can help me is to become me. Anything less than that, you really don't help me. And if you truly, truly want to help me, you have to become me. And becoming me means you have to become absolute desireless. That is perfection. That is Shuddha Sattva. That is the Parama Padam. Absolutely desireless. I have a small 4-year child. He's falling sick. Should I pray? Not pray. Is that a desire? Not a desire. No, is your responsibility? You take the responsibility. That's about it. It needs to be taken to the doctor. Take to the doctor. Beyond that, what can you do? Take my life. Save my child. Drama vaddu. One man went to a sadhu, his Guruji. He said, Guruji was teaching him like this, like me, going on blabbering, sannyasa, adhyatma, spirituality. He said, Swamiji, you have no wife, no children. You don't know the joy of wife and children and the pleasures of samsara. How much love you receive, how much they love you, you know. You are wandering alone. You have no idea of dry life. He gave lecture to this sannyasi back. This sannyasi said, okay, let me teach him what it is. He said, I'll give you a small medicine, a herb. You drink that tonight. Tomorrow morning you won't wake up. Your breath will stop, your heartbeat will stop, your body will turn cold, but you won't die. You'll be alive. Okay? And watch what happens. You'll be aware of what's going on. So he gave him that little herb because just to challenge. He said, I will prove to you that my people love me so much, they'll do anything for me. And you, sannyasi, you don't know anything about all these things. You have a dry, useless, neerus life. There's no joy in your life. All right, take this herb. He ate that herb for the experimenting because he was so confident, you see. He slept. Next morning, didn't wake up. After some time, mother realized, wife realized, children realized, and all the lamenting and crying started. He's dead, he's dead, he's dead. So sannyasi had assured, I will come at the right time and wake you up by giving you an antidote for that. So he was assured of that, he was lying there. So sannyasi entered after some time. He said, what happened? I heard so much of sound and noise here. Oh, my husband has passed away, in good age he has passed away, he's not even 50, 40, whatever. Oh, my son has passed away, what is this mother? I should not, what a plight of a mother who has to see her own son's death. I should have died before my son. All kinds of lamenting. So this Guruji said, okay, you are all so upset with his death, I have a solution. If anyone gives their life, I will exchange it for his life. If anybody says, I'll die and let him come up, it'll be fine. So everybody is looking at each other's face. Wife is looking at mother-in-law's face. Better this lady dies, I'll be done with her. Mother is looking, oh my God, this lady, better this daughter-in-law dies, I'll be at least living peacefully. Nobody is saying anything. Brother, cousin, all friends. Somebody said, so wives thought, I may get caught, So she said, I would have died for sure. But there are small children. They need mother's love more than father's love, you see. I have to look after them. So there is no way I can die. I would have very much wanted to die, you see. But I'm helpless. But this old lady, she's been around too long. Maybe just now she lamented, I should have died before my son died. What a fate of a mother to see her child die in front of her eyes. So probably she can be exchanged for this man. This man is listening. Then mother, he's wanting to know what my mother would say. For whose sake I would be ready to die, If Yama comes and tell. Then this old lady says, I would have died at this moment. I have no attachment to anything, no desires whatsoever. But my son had promised that he will take me to Tirtha Yatra. And if I don't go to Tirtha Yatra and die, even if he is alive, would he be at peace? He will curse himself that I could not take my mother to Tirtha Yatra. I should spare him all the sorrow and misery and guilt that will come. So I should not die. Because I must finish the Tirtha Yatra which my son had promised to me. Therefore I should not die. Both mother-in-law and daughter looking at each other's face. Oh, you are cunning, I am double cunning, you see. This man who must be in that state would have thought, I better die now. What's the point in coming alive, living with a wife and a mother like this? For whose sake I was doing everything. He would have thought like that. So this sannyasi knew the plight of this man. He gave the antidote, this man came alive. They both were shocked. Then sannyasi said, have I proven my point? He said, of course, yes. And he became a sannyasi too, saying that your life is better than my life. Ask this question to yourself. How many of your people will die for you? How many of your people will die for you if it comes to that? Ask this question to yourself. You will know the answer. Nobody will die for anybody else's sake. Nobody. Don't go by cinemas and those illusory stories and movies. Truth is this. For everybody, their life is dear. And they'll find some reason or the other why they should be alive and not others. They'll find a reason. Unless Hemlekha had shaken Hemchuda out of his reverie or dream-like living, this is life and this is enjoyment, Hemchuda would have never taken to the path of spirituality. So for me, it is for me to shake you all out of this slumber. Don't give these emotional excuses, oh, this is mother, that is father, they did this for me, I did for them. I have responsibility, I have son, first I am this, second I am that. In front of Atman, all are same. Who is mother, who is father, who is brother, who is sister. Ko mitrani, ko dhanani, ka cha vishayas dasvaha. Kva shastram, kva cha vijnanam, yada me galita spruha. What is friend? What is money? What are all the enjoyments of the senses? What is shastra? What is jnana? For the one whose desires have melted away, galita spruha, all his spruha, desires, aspirations have melted away. What is there for such a person in this world? That clarity you should get. That clarity you should get. And if you think you are committing a sin by not doing your so-called son's duty, sister's duty, husband's duty, wife's duty, brother's duty, all that stuff, then remember that last sloka of our Krishna. Sarva dharman parityajya. You are a dharma son, I know. You have a dharma as a husband, I know. You have dharma as a wife, I know. You have a dharma as a whoever you are, I know. But sarva dharman parityajya. You can give up all dharmas. I will not consider you as a sinner. Because for whose sake are you giving up? Not because your wife is a headache, so you want to give up wife and say, I'm a sannyasi, which wife, which husband, divorce. No. You are giving that up for whose sake? For my sake. In the sense, for the sake of the Atman. For the sake of knowing your true self, when everything else becomes an obstacle in your path, you are willing to give that up. That clarity, if you develop, that is Vairagya. Could be anybody. I'm sure most of these husbands and wives will go home and look at each other like this. Will you die for me? They're right, no? All these movie influence is there. जी नहीं सकता, मर नहीं सकता, खा नहीं सकता, सो नहीं सकता. तेरे बिना. First. After marriage, जी नहीं सकता, खा नहीं सकता, सो नहीं सकता, पी नहीं सकता, तेरे साथ. With you I can't live, I can't sleep, I can't eat. Before marriage, without you I cannot be like this. After marriage, with you I can't be like this. That is the plight of the mind. It will tempt you, it will trick you, it will seduce you into things of the world. You won't even realize it. So sweetly, so cleverly the mind does it. And almost prove it to you. As a son, husband, wife, brother, sister, this is what is right. This is what is dharma. So do this. Forget listening to that Baba and Baba's blabber. Just do this. Your parents will call, your husband will call, your wives will call and tell, hey, what are you talking? This is what it is. I am working for you. You know, when ugly, what is them? Valmiki was killing people. He went to his wife. Narada told, this is what Narada told. Valmiki was very happy with his wife, that Ratnakara dacoit, and his children. He was raising them well. He was proud. I am a good husband. I look after my children well. I give her new jewelry after killing people on the highway. I entertain with her with new things, food, all comforts in the forest. I protect them. So he was a very proud husband, like many husbands who are proud. I work 18 hours a day for whose sake? For the family's sake. No, he works for his sake. He wants his promotion. He wants his name. He wants to beat his colleague in the competition. He wants to show off that he has a bigger car than most of his friends. He wants to have a bigger house so he can tell, talk about it in his relative circle. He is not working for you. He may say so. So this Narada asked, okay, Ratnakara, you are so proud. You know this is sin. He said, yes, of course it is sin. But who cares? He said, all right, I don't care about it. But I just want one thing. For whose sake are you committing this? For the sake of my children and wife, because they are the ones whom I have to look after as a dharma of the husband. Okay, I'll ask you only one question. You go to your wife and ask her, will she share the sin of what you are doing? Luckily, at that time, people still believed, even if they're criminals, they believed that there is sin and there is merit and papa, punya, and they'll suffer if they're committing sins. Luckily, even a dacoit's wife believed then. Today's generation, as some boy told me, YOLO generation, you only live once. So enjoy. There is no death, birth, punyam, papam. They have junked all the scriptures and theories. You only live once, so enjoy as much as you want. Because you never know you'll live again or not. But even the criminal's wife in that yuga knew there is sins and I will have to suffer for it in hell. So he went and asked his wife, "Dear one, I work for you, you know that." "Of course, yes." "I love you very much and the children, you know that." "Yes, of course, I know." "So my question to you is, because I do everything for you, I look after you, but you know how I do it. I kill people. I loot people, rob people. Are you going to share the sin with me since you are my wife?" She said, "Why should I? Why should I share? That is your duty as a husband. How you earn is your problem. You married me. I'm your responsibility. You got children with me. They are your responsibility. As a father, you're supposed to feed. Now, how do you feed? You kill somebody, rob somebody, you work hard. You are an IT engineer, you are an army, you are a doctor, you are a lawyer. How does it matter to me? You cheat in your office or you work honestly. How does it matter to me? That's none of my concern. My concern is you should feed us because you have married me." He got a shock. No worse shock than this man who listened to his mother-in-law, mother and wife's conversation. He was shocked. For this wife, I did everything. And she says she will not share the sin, nor the children should share the sin. Vairagya came. And he became Valmiki. Today we don't know his wife's name, today we don't know his children's name, but we know his name. Isn't it? Bhartrihari, I read about him. This man was a king in Ujjain. At least Ujjain is a very, very big kingdom at some point in time. Ujjaini it used to be called. King Vikramaditya was his brother. This man was Bhartrihari. So fond of his third wife by name Pingala. Infatuated. He cannot think of anything other than his wife. His guru was there, one Gorakhnath Baba. This Babaji came to the kingdom. And he saw this king and understood this king is losing his way. Too much of infatuation, too much of attachment. But he has great role to play, bigger purpose. So what this Guruji did, he gave him a phala, Amruta phala. If you eat that, you will live very, very long, you will not grow old, you will always remain young, healthy. And he said, you are a king, you're a just king, you're a kind king. If you eat this, you will live long and serve the praja. So here is the fruit to you. The king took it very gratefully and went home and thought, if my wife lives longer, I will enjoy more. She should remain young, beautiful. She should not grow old, wrinkly. So let me give this fruit to my wife. So he called his wife and gave this fruit, Pingala. Take this fruit. If you eat this, you'll always remain young. So he wanted the wife to remain young forever so that he can always boast around, I have Miss World with me. Or Miss Ujjaini at least. He gave. This wife was in love with the Senapati. And she thought, if I eat this king is not going to leave me. Let this king die some point in time. But if I give to this Senapati, I can enjoy the Senapati for a longer time. He'll remain young and vital. Otherwise, he'll grow old and weak. Then we cannot have pleasures. So she gave in turn to this Senapati. Senapati was in love with a maid. And this Senapati thought, I love that maid so much, servant maid. She should be given this. Because she will be younger and live longer. So he silently gave this fruit to this maid servant. And this maid servant thought, our king is the most noblest and the most just. He should live the longest. I should give this fruit to the king. And she came with the fruit and to the king. King, I want to offer a fruit, is Amruta phala. If you eat that, I know all these things. Who gave you this fruit in the first place? To me, that Senapati gave. Who gave the Senapati call? Your wife only gave. He got a shock of his life. He became a sannyasi. So you don't need to necessarily go through shocks to become sannyasis. All I am proving is that. Don't have to go through that. Wise people have said, snakes bite and you die. Don't have to get a snake, get yourself bitten and see whether you die or not. Not necessary. That's all I am trying to say. Even Rama and Sita could not live in peace. Iha samsare, bahudustare, kripaya pare, pahi murare. The samsara is full of misery. And all those people who put a brave face and say, oh, our marriage is a success and our children are so. Ask them how hollow their words are. Their success because they could not divorce themselves. That's all it is. There were plenty of women when they could have divorced each other if there was an opportunity. But because of our traditions, culture, the social pressure, the family pressures, the children's pressure is so high that they just somehow drag on and on and on. But that does not mean their marriages are successful. Or these worldly friendships that we talk about, Tere bina ji nahi sakta, kha nahi sakta, pee nahi sakta. All this sounds good in movies and films, and because that's what they sell. They sell people what they want to hear. If you tell spiritual things, who wants to hear? So remember this. Remind yourself of what is true, what is not. Nitya anityatam smara. Unless you do that, you cannot develop dispassion. So if you tell me, how do I develop vairagya? Keep telling yourself this again and again. This is not in line with my spiritual path. This is an obstacle for that. It could be as simple as having an extra dosa when you don't need to, or sleeping an extra hour when you don't need to, or making extra friendships when you don't need to, or watching extra things which you don't need to, or reading extra things which you don't need to, or going extra places which you don't need to. It could be anything. If it is not helping you to grow spiritually, discard ruthlessly, mercilessly. Mercilessly discard that mind and its vagaries. Say nothing doing. Kill it. Jnana khangena. With the sword of jnana. Kill it, they say. Cut it. Don't wait. With the sword of jnana, just cut those attachments and free yourself. No thinking. That's what I am saying. Your foot is caught in a crocodile's mouth. You have a sword in your hand. What are you going to tell? That is Brahman. This is Brahman. Brahman goes to Brahman. You'll allow your foot to go inside his mouth. What will you do? Take the sword and thrust it into the mouth of that crocodile. And out of pain it will leave and run. That is what Shankara told his mother. This crocodile is catching my feet and pulling me into this river. I shall die if you don't deliver me by permitting me to become a sannyasi. And that is a real mother. She said, if you have to survive by becoming a sannyasi, rather you become a sannyasi and survive, but don't die. That is motherhood. That is real love. So if your parents say, no, nothing like this, nothing like that, or your people, parents, or whoever around you starts advising in all possibles, tell them. The only way I will survive is if I can remain in the path of God. Any other way, I don't think I will survive. And they should say, yes, then if you think you will survive only that way, then so be it. And two mothers approached the King Edward and asked him, they're fighting over a baby, saying, this is mine, this is mine. The Edward was not sure how to do justice. So he said, okay, we'll cut the baby into two. One part to this mother, one part to that mother. The moment he took the sword out, the real mother cried out saying, please don't cut the baby, give it to the other lady, it's okay, but don't cut the baby into two. He told she is the real mother, give the baby to her. That is real mother, for whom the baby and her welfare or its welfare is more important than her desires, her attachments. She is a real mother. That is the ideal of motherhood or fatherhood, whichever way you put it. If there were two fathers fighting also, king would have done the same thing, cut the baby into two. That kind of clarity, parents, friends, relations, everybody should have, and you should have in the first place. You should have in the first place that I am here for knowing the truth and nothing less than that will be agreeable to me. If that means giving up everyone, everything, perfect. Give it up without thinking twice. Because the moment you start thinking twice, there is a possibility mind will come in and will convince you. Without thinking twice, then and there, immediately, tachha, do it. Without thinking twice. When crocodile is eating your leg, are you going to think twice? When the snake is approaching, are you going to think and analyze? What will you do? You save yourself when your body is on fire. Can you desire for anything else? Where is my friend? Where is my mother? No, you'll run to jump into a pool. That kind of feeling should be there in you. Only then Vairagya is possible. If that is not there, Vairagya is not possible. You understand? I'll talk more about this, but you should go do a mananam about what I said.
Mano buddhya hankara chitta श्रोत्र जिह्वे न च घ्राणनेत्रे न च व्योम भूमिर्न तेजो न वायुः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न च प्राणसंज्ञो न वै पञ्चवायुः न वा सप्तधातुर्न वा पञ्चकोशः न वा पाणिपादौ न चोपस्थपायुः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न मे द्वेषरागौ न मे लोभमोहौ मदो नैव मे नैव मात्सर्यभावः न धर्मो न चाक्रो न कामो न मोक्षः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न पुण्यं न पापं न सौख्यं न दुःखं न मन्त्रो न तीर्थं न वेदा न यज्ञः अहं भोजनं नैव भोज्यं न भोक्तः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न मे मृत्युशङ्का न मे जातिभेदा पिता नैव मे नैव माता न जन्मः न बन्धुर्न मित्रं गुरुर्नैव शिष्यः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवो